Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anyone watching live now or listening later to the podcast version. It is my pleasure once again to have someone talking to me, in this case, Mr. Bruce Brown. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, like I said before, ending the week on a high, hopefully. These things,
Yes.
um, I'm always a bit apprehensive when things get started, but then after a few minutes, they always seem to get better.
Mhm.
Um, Before we sort of get deep into your work and your latest project, um, are you reading anything interesting at the moment? Have you got any book in your hands?
I pretty much, my wife is a writer. I went and she's done about 29 books of all different genres. I've read them all. And so currently reading nothing at the moment.
Okay. Yes. Oh, so that's an interesting dynamic. Are you beta reader?
No, no, I've never had that. I've
Okay.
never had that. I know people, I know writers do that. I've never done it.
Is that to keep the relationship functioning and avoid conflict, or just any specific reason
Oh, you
behind that?
mean my wife's books?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just read them because I love them.
Okay. No, but
Yeah,
like
no, I don't do beta reading. I don't do it. She doesn't do it. So
okay.
no,
So you only get the finished product,
I only
which
get the finished product. Yeah.
okay. Um. So I, in a way, I think. So I had a quick look at, because you reached out to me about your latest project, the
Mhm.
comic book adaptation of the Cats of Ulthar, and we'll get to that. But prior, I think in a sort of rather perverse way, uh, you've done Lovecraft adaptations for children.
Oh yes.
And I don't know if that's really perverse, because then I suspect these poor kids may first encounter Lovecraft through your work. And then when they go to the real thing, in my
Mhm.
mind, there's a slight descent into madness there. So, how did that come about?
Well, basically, I started writing comics late in life, and I had I was of course a Lovecraft fan, but I always envisioned reimagining it to a younger audience. And so my first book was Howard Lovecraft and the Frozen Kingdom, and it's the story about him when he's young, just a child. And I had people, they were Lovecraft fans when I told them I was doing it. They were like, you can't do this. And I'm like, why not? You know, I even had like a death threat online over the book when it came out because there was such I think I was touching uncharted territory and somebody took immense offense to it. But I mean, the book was critically acclaimed. It was featured in Chicago Tribune, Rue Morgue magazine, and it was wildly successful. So then I went on, did two other books in the series, and then I also did one later with the character of Herbert West. I wanted to introduce it in a way that would be fun for children, but also an adult could read it and find humor in the book as well. Because you can do things in the story that kids won't pick up on, but adults will laugh at.
Hmm. That's the success of the Toy Story movies, isn't it? They work
Right.
on both levels.
Exactly. Exactly. So it was more in my mind, it was an all ages project. But I was such a huge fan of Lovecraft, I wanted to do it. And I had so much fun doing it, I kept going.
Mm. And sorry to labor the point, but there's always some idiot on the internet. But there's a lot of idiots on the internet. So you receive a death threat,
Hmm.
which is absolutely moronic thing to do. Like,
Hmm.
how do you deal with that?
You know, it was a crazy thing. I literally, it was online. I reported it, but I just sat there and thought, I know what I'm doing. I believe in this project, and nothing's going to stop me from doing it. And now, today, you see all different kinds of books. Uh, I saw like one that was C is for Cthulhu. It was like a kid's book.
Mm.
It's so much more normal or common now. But back then, no one had done it.
But it cannot have been that long ago when you
Oh,
wrote this book, right?
I wrote that book probably over 2 decades ago.
Yeah, yeah. I think. Yeah, I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago, and like the passage of time seems to be muddled. Once you get to a certain age, you still
Hmm.
think that 20 years ago wasn't that long ago. Uh,
Yeah.
but 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 still, that's just internet era, post new millennium.
Hmm.
You would have thought that by then we would be a bit more clued up about things
Right.
and
Yeah.
reacting. But that's
Yeah.
a shame. Yeah, like I said, there's idiots everywhere. And the problem is that now, obviously, they got a voice. Well, they can voice
Exactly. Exactly.
their opinions. Um, but those Lovecraft for children's books, then they
Hmm.
became animated projects, didn't they? You have some pretty big names.
They did 3 movies. Uh, First one was loosely based off the book, and then they did 2 other movies. And they did have Ron Perlman, Mark Hamill, some fairly big names in it.
Hmm. And what was your degree of involvement with those movies?
None.
You just sat
None.
there and collected a
I
paycheck.
mean, honestly, I watched the first one. I hated it.
Oh, really?
I actually drank a lot of wine during it because I thought it was so bad, and it took out all the elements that I felt made the book work or the story work, and it just, and then I refused to watch the other 2.
Ooh. So, were you approached like to sell the rights for the adaptation and so on?
It was it had to deal. It was largely my publisher at the time was going into leaving comics and going into movies, and I they sent me the script. I looked it over, and I just pulled out a red pen and wrote all these things. And but they just it was out of my hands then, and I just genuinely didn't like it, so I never watched the other ones.
Yeah, because with I don't know, like with the comics world, did you still retain the rights to the comics, or did they belong to the publisher? What was the arrangement there?
You have certain rights that you retain, and there's certain rights you give away. I mean,
Right.
that's basically how it works. I mean,
Hmm.
there's different companies you could go to today. Let's say Image Comics, you could go to them. You'll maintain all the rights to the property. So, I mean, it's a different thing. But back then, I knew I was just starting off. I was kind of late in life to start writing. I didn't start writing till I was 39.
Hmm.
And so it was just, I didn't know a lot about this industry.
Yeah. So what did you do before writing?
I just, truth is, I got into writing comics because as a child, I had a reading disorder. And
Hmm.
my parents took me to a reading specialist, and the first thing they said was, you have to make reading fun for him. So they recommended comics, and they took me to a comic book store. I bought a couple, fell in love with them. It was fun for me to read. I got my reading ability. It really jump started my love of the genre. And I kept reading them into my 40s. I still do. And so it was something when I was 39, I remember Marvel Comics had some kind of contest, and they're like, write a comic or a short story and we'll pick a winner. So I did. I sent it into them, and it wasn't picked up, but they wrote me back and they said, you have such a strong ability to craft a scene. Keep writing. And so a year later, I had Howard come out.
Mm. Um. So, ha- did you take any kind of formative course or like research into how to write for comics?
I did do a little research into it, but I just began talking with other comic creators. I had one comic creator who kind of mentored me, and this is how you write a script. This is, when you're looking for an artist, because it becomes a full team project. So you have to learn about script writing in comic style. You have to learn what is good comic art. So, I mean, I learned a lot from him, and I also had other creators who I network with, and eventually just got the groove of it.
Mm. Have you? I haven't, but it's one of those books on the forever growing TBR. Alan Moore's on writing for comics.
I never read it.
Yeah, no,
I've heard of it. I've read his work. His work's brilliant, but I didn't even know he did that.
mm.
I've
So,
seen
so
scripts of his where you would write like each part of the page of a comic is broken down into panels. So I would write a scene where it would be like, okay, this is the angle I want the reader to see this from. This takes place at daytime. This is what they're looking at. And I saw him do one, and he would write like a page to describe one panel. It blew my mind.
because I've met David Lloyd, who drew V for
Hmm.
Vendetta, and Kevin O'Neill, who did the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, a couple of conventions, and yeah,
Hmm.
like they said that with Alan Moore you get like a very descriptive, very detailed uh, script to go with. Um, and what were those first comics that your parents took you to the shop to buy? What was your gateway?
I would say the Incredible Hulk. It,
Uh,
I loved it. There was something about it that just connected with me. And at the time, I was probably, I don't know, probably 9 or so. And, I, like most kids, you get bullied in school. And so you'd see this guy who was a frail guy, but if you made him mad, he became
mm,
this huge behemoth. And so I don't know why, it just connected with me. And then I started reading other ones, and I just didn't stop. I didn't stop. And then eventually, really, the thing that slowed me down in reading comics was starting to write them.
yeah, yeah. Because this is a battle that I've got with my own children. That
Hmm.
kids these days they don't really like to read. It's not
Right.
like when I was younger. I remember going to friends' house and we would spend the whole afternoon trading comics and reading
Right.
comics. And I was actually talking to an editor here in Spain, and he said, "Oh yeah, we just need to make the content for new readers." But I
Hmm.
don't think I think the industry has moved along. So that core reader group from the 80s and 70s, and they've moved along with them. And I
Right.
don't think present company accepted, no one is
Hmm.
making content for new readers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you go into a comic shop. I remember going into one, and they were guys in their 40s. They were like 50s, and I was looking around for kids, and you just don't see them.
That's right.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the price and the quality of the presentation has moved up in price as those kids are now have got more money. And I think
Right.
we kind of leaving the new generation behind. I don't know, or maybe I'm just not aware of what's going on for kids anymore these days. But that's the feeling I've got.
I remember, gosh, this is really going to date me, but when I would go to the comic shop, eh, comics were 20 cents.
Hmm.
So my mom would give us $1 and you could buy a bunch.
Yeah,
I mean, now the prices of them are just through the roof. There was a time when comics just became so hot and the quality of paper went up. Back then, the quality of paper was very plain,
hmm,
so they could keep the printing costs down. But I think you're right. It's important to find ways to reach new readers, and that's what I try to do with my children's books because I thought I wanted to reach kids, and I also thought I have a passion for Lovecraft, and combining the two just seemed to make sense.
well, I think from the way the conversation is going, it only makes sense to you from what you said at the time. But I get it. I get it. Um,
I mean, for example, like Herbert West, I
mhm.
did a book where he's a child genius and he just literally gets bored. And because he creates all these things, and eventually he goes to reanimate the dead. But while he's doing it, he's eating a Johnny cake, which is like a donut back then. And the mixture gets into the formula. He reanimates this dead person, and they go crazy to get all the donuts in town. I mean, just different, something that kids could find fun, but adults could find fun.
Yeah. No, I get that. And talking about the process of creating the comic,
Mhm.
uh, I'm sure you write the script, you review it, whatever. I'm
Right.
interested in the choosing the artist that is going to
Sure.
present your work because, um, to quote Sir Terry Pratchett, he said that he wrote the Discworld, but Josh Kirby, the man that drew all the covers, he said he created Discworld. So obviously
Right.
you're trying to find someone that is going to create your vision. So
Exactly.
how do you go about finding that artist?
Well, you have to tailor it because artists have different styles. Certain stories, you may want something more traditional. You may want one a little more cartoony. You may want some that's very kind of abstract. You basically find, I mean, I would just basically go to the internet, search different artists. There were websites you could see their work. I also, I mean, I reached out to people even on, can't remember what they were called, but they were sites where people worked for film. And they
Mhm.
did, long before technology today, these beautiful backgrounds. And I started writing, talking to these people, and they love comics. And they were like, oh, I'll draw that for you. So yeah, it's really a matter of just searching to find them, but knowing what artist you need to tell that story for that vision. You don't want to like do like Cats of Ulthar and make it cartoony. I
Mm.
want, you try to tailor the artist to the vision.
And I'm guessing it's a little bit easier these days, once again, because of the internet, for you to
Mhm.
browse different artists and
All over the
to.
world.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So, have you ended up working with someone that is half a world away?
I usually always do that. Oh yeah, absolutely. I've worked with people from Brazil, all over the world, and it's simple now. You just you communicate through email. They'll show you rough drafts. I mean, sometimes they even forget where the artist is from. You just get
Mm,
to talk to them so much. My letterer, who I've worked with for 20 years, is from Italy.
okay, yeah, because I was fortunate enough a couple of months ago. I was interviewing Eduardo Riso, if you know
Hmm.
he. And it was funny because he said he didn't speak English, and Brian Azzarello doesn't speak Spanish, but
Hmm.
they sort of got together to do 100 bullets. So he needed someone to translate Azzarello's scripts for him. And yeah, I'm guessing maybe you have that sort of
I've
relationship.
I've actually I've actually had a few problems with that. I remember I was working with this one artist on a book, and there was some challenges in language. And I remember he sent me this page, and there was this character that had like a knife stuck in his ear, and I'm like, where where are you getting this? And he's just like, oh, I totally misread it. I'm sorry. It was just it was a language barrier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I have my next question obviously ready, and it happens all the time. Um, anyway, okay, we'll move on. Come back to me later. So, um, how did you go about selecting which Lovecraft story to adapt? Because obviously you've got the classics there, Shadow over Innsmouth, the
Hmm.
much fabled Mountains of Madness, where I keep changing my mind about it. Uh,
Right.
Dunwich Horror, which is my all-time favorite. Um, how do you go about selecting those?
I do, honestly, it's hard because I love so many of them. In fact, in the third Howard book, I do an homage to Mountain of Madness in it. I really like, say, for example, Cats. I just love the story, and I had a vision in my head of trying to tell it in a different, unique way. but yeah, there's lots of stories I would still love to continue to do.
Because after I read Cats of Ulthar, that very thankful that you sent me the sample. I started thinking that maybe for comic book format, his shorter stories probably work better than the
Right.
novellas.
Yeah, I believe that.
And
I do
that,
believe that.
and straight away, as soon as I finished Cats, I was thinking The Terrible Old Man, which I think is one that every time I reread, I think
Hmm.
there's so much potential there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many things you could do, but I know there are people who have took on the larger projects of this or the larger scale of his work. I don't know. It's what strikes me at the time to
Hmm.
what I want to do.
The thing is that, and I've talked about this in the past with, you know, uh, Lovecraft's biographers, David Goodwin. People can check out
Mhm.
that conversation, and the guys from Eldritch episodes who do audio dramas. Is that the bigger stories are? I think they are much harder to adapt.
Right.
Um, and like I said, something like The Vault, like you said, Cats,
Hmm.
Cool Air. I would love to see an adaptation.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there's that. But with Cats, um, so I really like the artwork. Like I mentioned to you, it reminded me
Hmm.
a bit of Dave McKean, Ben Templesmith, those sort of
Right.
faded backgrounds.
Right.
It works really, really well. My only gripe, and this is where you tell
No.
me why I'm wrong, is we're going to go into spoiler territory here for everyone that may not have read the story. Is that in Cats, the people of the village,
Hmm.
they have this very kind of, with another reason, but it's a very symbiotic relationship with the cats. They are very respectful of the cats, except
Right.
for except for this one couple.
Hmm.
And in your story, that's not quite the case, because
Hmm.
when the cats turn, it's
Hmm.
not just with that one couple, and that's why I felt that you sort of were not really true to the spirit of the story, if I can say that.
Yeah, sure. Of course you can. I mean, personally, I wasn't trying to recreate the story. I wanted to reimagine it. I wanted it to address other themes for it. I wanted to give a twist on an element of it and yet bring something different to the table. I mean, it was, I read people who say that this is like more a tale about, modern people's view towards authority. I know somebody who thought that it was like uh, defining the relationship of the townspeople and their cats is like an analogy for people's comfort with AI. So, I mean, everybody sees things differently when they read a book. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just kind of how books are. And I always felt that I loved the story Cats of Ulthar. It was one of Lovecraft's favorites. He was a huge cat lover, and I started thinking about it to tell it from the perspective of cats. But to do that, I couldn't do it the way he structured the story. I had to dramatically make a few changes.
And but that opens up a completely different conversation, isn't it? When
Mhm.
Because I understand doing an adaptation, you're not going to keep everything the same. The comic book
Right.
format is not a movie format or an animation
Mm.
or or, or the short story. But when you reinterpret something, I don't know, is it okay to put your own spin on things, or to use it to reflect your own personal views that may not have been present in the original work? I'm asking the question. I haven't got the answer.
Yeah, no, I actually think yes, you can. You give your own personal spin. I think that's why you see I mean, for example, even Lovecraft himself, people say, oh, he had influences from these people, these people. I think that's how the tapestry of art is woven in this world. That people are influenced by certain things and they create their own vision. And yes, this is a dramatically different retelling, yet still similar. It's just it's not an adaptation, because an adaptation would be, I'm going to convert what he wrote and put it in graphic novel form. This is more of a reimagining, a reinventing of the story, to try to add some elements to it that people never looked at it, and hopefully even inspire people, if they haven't read it, to go back and read the original story.
That's true. That's true. That will certainly achieve that. I mean, and like I told you, it's how I was going to do it. Like, I needed to go back to the original source and
Mhm.
then
Right.
read your story, and I will certainly achieve that. Um, and once again, I'm just asking the question. I'm not
Sure.
accusing anyone of anything.
Mhm.
Let me rephrase it. Do you think that that may open you up, or anyone that does a reimagining, to criticism of piggybacking on the back of Lovecraft's name or whoever other author
Mhm.
they are reinterpreting to, put their work out there?
I actually don't think that. I mean, Stephen King has written stories that were like very Lovecraft-esque, even an homage to it. Lots
Mm.
of writers have done that. I don't think they're thinking, I'm piggybacking on this person. I think it's almost like a love letter.
Yeah, but then, but I dislike, because Stephen King has that, Ramsey Campbell has done that, and those two authors that I'm aware of, that then they've gone back and sort of discredited and sort of poo-pooed their Lovecraft influences. So Stephen King has certainly done that, and
Really?
yeah. Like, he sort of not poo-pooed, but like belittled that. Like, it's okay for when you're a teenager, but it's not okay
Wow.
as a more mature horror writer. Um,
Hmm.
and Ramsey
Wow.
Campbell and Ramsey Campbell similarly, because he obviously started very young
Hmm.
with The Inhabitant of the Lake, and he's moved on later in life to do other things. And they sort of look back at those Lovecraftian stories as a lesser work. Uh,
Interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't
uh,
know they did that.
yeah, it's certainly out there on YouTube. Particularly Stephen King, you can certainly find that. But
Hmm.
I've got my own issues with Stephen King. That people that follow me and the podcast know what I think about Stephen King. Um, so obviously you're not going to belittle Lovecraft. Is for you still very much worthy of respect.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think to diminish it is, wow. I think if he's absolutely worthy of respect. There are scholars who study this, and there's a reason his work should be studied. I totally respect it. My work was always just like more like a love letter to his work, but also trying to do what I create and combine that with introducing new people to him.
Because I think no matter how much you progress as a writer,
Hmm.
I think you should always look back to what you did at the beginning
Right.
and still appreciate it and
Hmm.
respect it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to me, I was, I look back at some of my older work, I read it, and I don't just do Lovecraft. That's been the majority of my work, but I've also done superhero horror or separate horror comedy and things like that. But some of my most favorite works were Lovecraft.
And so here's the question. So surely you've, whether it was the word progress, matured as a writer. So
Hmm.
when you look back at your early work, like, what did you feel like? Do you see more of the sort of, I was beginning, maybe it's not as polished, maybe it's not maybe as good as you will be able to do it now,
Hmm.
but you wouldn't reject it, would you? Or you wouldn't.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean honestly, there are people who I get that you grow as a writer and as a person, and you do, but and you might look back at something you wrote and go, oh, I don't like that quite as much. But like those books, I don't. I go back, I look at it, I still love them. They're like kids, my kids to me. And I don't have that yet, even though now I think I'm much more nuanced in how I tell a story. I can craft it a little differently. I know like how much I need to give and how much I need to let the artist breathe who's creating it.
Yeah. And have you got because this is the question I had before. It eventually came back. Have you got repeated artists that you work with, or do you choose one for every specific story?
I've worked with some people over and over again over the years, and also sometimes it really depends on the story. Sometimes I might, if this person tells fits that story, I'll go with them if I've worked with them before. But overall, each one is unique. You need to find that person that conveys that specific story. There is no artist that I know of that you could just go to and be like, okay, I want it this way, they do it. Okay, I want it this totally different way, they do it. Usually artists have their own flavor, and you have to find the one that matches yours.
Mm. Yeah, because back to my interview with Eduardo Rizzo, because he's worked for so many years with Brian Azzarello, so many different projects. He told
Hmm.
me that now he just gets like a basic script from Brian
Right.
because Brian knows what he's gonna get back. He knows
Hmm.
how Eduardo works, and now the scripts have
Right.
sort of diminished in length and
Hmm.
detail. Have you found that sort of relationship building with a particular artist?
It's I've known countless artists. I've had times where some of them were just wildly professional, beautifully creative, and I've had some that were wildly unprofessional.
Mm.
It took me 5 years to finish my Herbert West book because
Oh,
I would have artists, they just quit midstream, or they'd be like, "Oh, I lost interest in doing that." I mean, just crazy reasons. I once had an artist who I he saw the his artwork after the inker went in and put shadows, and he was so upset the way he did it, which I looked at it, I thought it was great. And he literally said, I won't work anymore till this is changed. And so I canceled the book.
yeah, yeah. It happens, isn't it? Because it's not just you, the writer, and the
Correct.
artist. You got the
Oh, yeah.
inker, particularly if you got a colorist as well.
Yes. Letters as well. Letterer is probably the only person I've worked with consistently for 20 years.
Hmm.
I have the same letterer, amazing guy, who's unbelievably professional, and I've stuck with him. But
Hmm.
lettering is different from hiring an artist. If I'm going to do like a superhero book, I can't have somebody who has like almost an eerie horror vibe to it. It just doesn't seem to work for me.
Yeah, and then when this is something that has always sort of made me think, but I haven't had the chance to discuss with people. When you got the idea for your story, how
Hmm.
involved are you in the conceptual art for the creation of the characters?
It depends on if I worked with the artist before. There's times where they will send me rough drafts of this is what the character looks like. Particularly when I did Howard Lovecraft in the Frozen Kingdom, the artist sent me a few different styles of what he envisioned it and let me choose which one I like. But I've also had artists where I trusted them enough that I just turned over the script and let them do it.
Okay, all right. That's and And how long does that conceptual art of like designing the characters take, more or less?
I genuinely not that long.
Really?
Because you're getting just rough, you're getting kind of rough sketches. Here's what they look like, and then they take it from there.
Okay.
I mean, when I saw the first picture I saw of Howard, I was like, he's too old. He has to be a younger child. I mean, little things like that. But overall, you work with people. Once that's agreed upon, they just go.
Right. And then sort of, so how long has Cats been out, or is it coming out?
Oh, it just recently was. It was first released on Kindle, and now it's released on paperback. It's available on Amazon. So
Mm-hmm.
just recent.
And are you already thinking about your next project?
I'm working right now with a really talented writer, Jerry Bucilli, helping him adapt one of his stories into a comic format.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also thinking of my next project, which isn't Lovecraftian.
What are you thinking about?
I really am thinking about a horror story that is kind of almost more of, wow, it's really hard to say. That's bad. It's more of a demonic estate sale or yard sale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, it's hard to say things where I don't start to give away too much.
I understand. I understand. Um,
Mhm.
so usually, because Cats is not that overly long
No,
in
it
terms of
wasn't
number of
original either.
pages. So
Mm-hmm.
how long? How many pages is it? Sorry.
22, 24.
So how long would it take you to go from idea to final draft of the script?
I usually go through, I write the script, and I just write it. I don't stop. I don't edit as I go. And then I go back, I clean it up, I polish it. It depends. Some scripts I've written 66 pages, more than that, and it just flows so easy because I genuinely believe that a good story is like a gift given to you and it flows through you. And to me, those stories I wrote the fastest. And then there are ones I worked on where I labored on it and it would take me a month or so. The amount of time to write the script is nowhere near the amount of time it takes for the artwork to be produced.
Mm. And as you're writing, do you have images in your head of the page composition?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously you detail those
Hmm.
uh, on the script as well. So like maybe having a splash page or a
Right.
one
Yeah.
quarter, three quarters type thing. Oh,
Hmm. Yeah, you
yeah.
definitely get like in your mind, I always consider myself a visual storyteller because in my
Hmm.
mind, while I'm writing this, I'm seeing it in my head.
Yeah. When I doubled in writing, it was the same to me. I would be writing the story and I could picture it, but
Mhm.
I I cannot draw a circle with a compass.
Oh,
So
I'm a stick figure guy personally.
so did you send like did you do little um sketches on the page to go along or just
Oh
leave
no,
it?
it would be embarrassing. It would be embarrassing. I'm that bad at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because like the times I thought about it, but I can't. Yeah, like I said, I
Mhm.
cannot draw a circle with a compass. I'm
Yeah.
so jealous when I go to conventions and I see artists, sketching things out. To me, it's like
Right.
magic when I
Oh,
see
it
someone.
is like magic to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I wish I could, but I'm so terrible at it, and that's why I just stick to my writing.
yeah. Absolutely. And sort of moving on a little bit. So you're still reading comics as an adult. I do as
Mhm.
well. I
Yeah.
still do. Um, but are you still with the superheroes, or are you moving on to more sort of longer, thicker? graphic novel type things.
Honestly, that's when comics started. It was, believe it or not, if you look back, it was westerns, it was romance, it was horror, and superheroes. Superheroes was just the most popular. But as the genre grows, there's so many books out there that tell stories that aren't superhero related.
Mm.
You can use it in all kinds of formats. I've seen people like, I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote like a story about his struggles with cancer. You've got Mouse is one. You've got all different kinds of things in the genre. So, I mean, I love to be able to read somebody's different vision and experience in that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love the superhero genre. I always will. It was a childhood love of mine. But I like to be able to see a writer do something totally different in the field.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that because in particularly in the European tradition, there were some really big Western writers and
Mhm.
artists. When maybe it's that fascination that in Europe we never had that in our
Mhm.
history, and it's that attraction to the American sort of
Right,
frontier tale. A bit like you had the spaghetti westerns, you've
right.
had your European Western comics,
Mhm.
but particularly in the French school. Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Just by chance, I think a couple of years ago, I one of my local conventions here in Spain, they brought a Korean artist and writer,
Mhm.
and she's writing stories about um, the the Chinese invasion of Korea and the separation of
Right.
the two, and she's writing those human stories
Mhm.
about the families that were separated and trying
Right.
to re-encounter, lost relatives from North Korea, South Korea. There's so much out there that, yeah, any genre you can think of, you can find.
I liked the fact that it can be whatever you want it to be. It can be whatever you want it to be. You're not limited by it. And I think
Mm,
more and more people see that in the genre.
yeah. Couple of questions then, because I had this debate with a colleague of mine. She's an art teacher, and she held the position that comics are not art because it's
Mm.
sequential storytelling. And she said that the images, because they are sequential storytelling, is not a piece of art. And I wholeheartedly disagree. Uh,
I wholeheartedly disagree. That's ridiculous. I mean, honestly, I remember, oh, I'm trying to remember his name. I met this one guy, can't believe it's blanking out on me, but he was a brilliant comic artist. And I was just starting off, and he literally showed me a page of his. And he showed me how each thing in the panel, whether it was light or shade or placement of the characters, would guide the reader's eyesight through the story. He would lead them per panel on the journey of the story. And it was beautiful artwork. There are collectors who collect nothing but comic art. I mean,
mm,
original comic art. It's expensive anymore. I was, once in a comic shop, and this guy, and I'm talking to the owner, and this guy comes in. He's in a wheelchair, and he has a garbage bag on his lap, and he wheels up to the counter, and he just casually tosses the garbage bag, and says, "Is this worth anything? I found it in my parents' attic." The guy lifts it up and then reaches under the counter, pulls out two wood tongs, and slowly pulls out the first comic with Spider-Man. And he's like, "You need to go to Christie's auction house because this is worth a fortune." And I mean, people. I get it. People may not view it as art. It's not going to be, but it is. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
well, I just think I just extrapolate. If we can consider movies as art,
Hmm.
then comics have to be art. It's just a blend of image and the written word.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That,
If you
that
think about it, sequential storytelling is really one of the oldest forms of storytelling. You see the pictures on the cave walls where the stick figure hunter is chasing the buffalo.
Hmm.
It is sequential storytelling.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, is there? Well, it was going to be one of my closing questions, but any particular artist that you really rate these days? Someone you would love to work with?
Honestly, I would say the artist I haven't met yet. I mean, I know that
Mm,
there's a lot of famous artists out there, and I admire their work, but there's something of a feeling that you find somebody that nobody knows about at the moment, but they bring this beautiful vision with their art to life. And I think that's more exciting to me than probably working with somebody I would say, oh, I like this guy's art, or I love his style. And I could go on and name guys who I just think are beautiful artists. But I actually think about the people who are just starting, who you could find and you could be like, holy cow, the world needs to see you.
but don't you think that the artists these days are better than the one you talked about, that number one Spider-Man by Steve Ditko?
Right.
It, it, it really wasn't great, like super great art compared to some of the stuff that you can see today.
Well, I guess that I agree, but I disagree.
Go on.
Because, like, if you look at Jack Kirby's original artwork, he revolutionized comics artwork from what he did, and he was one of the originals. And I know there are some where you're like, it's not that great, but back then I always go to Jack Kirby. He brought a certain kind of style, and I think it just grew from there. I mean, today now you have a much more realistic type of style. And bear in mind, those guys back then, they didn't have the tools that modern artists have today.
That's true. But even the writing as well, because I got on those omnibus collections the
Hmm.
original X-Men run by Stan Lee and
Hmm.
who was the first artist for X-Men? I can't remember now. But I found the writing was super cringy. It was just like really bad storytelling. I was like, oh my god, this is the fable of Stan Lee.
Hmm.
Um, and then thank God that Chris Claremont came after, because
I mean, honestly, I look at it like this. If you think of the time, nobody was thinking like this is going to be around decades and decades later with such rabid following. It was like pulp writing. You just want the kid to come into the store, spin the spinner wheel, 20 cents to buy the book. So I think there was a formulaic thing with some of the early writing, without a question. But yet, in the same sense, like with Stan Lee, he wrote the first run on Silver Surfer, and I actually think it's one of the most brilliant runs on a comic.
no, I think he definitely had a prodigious mind, like the
Mhm.
creativity that he came. He all the pretty much all the Marvel superheroes.
Yes,
He
pretty much.
he wrote them all, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, and they were there from the beginning.
Hmm.
So there is that. It's just that the storytelling, yeah, it was a little bit
Oh
no.
no, I know what you're saying though.
Yeah, it's the same as. But it's the same with things like Superman and Batman. I think they're so done to death. I don't know what new story can be done with Batman that we haven't seen before.
You know,
But
I I'll tell you this. I always think back on probably my favorite comic was Christopher Priest did a run on the Black Panther.
mhm.
The series was called The Client, and there have been countless Black Panther stories done, and he told it. I really liken it to like Pulp Fiction. You would have little fragmented stories throughout, like a couple pages, then it totally shift. and he would slowly weave it all together at the end into this beautiful, comprehensive story that at the time you're like, what's going on? Because it wasn't traditional. So even though I do see what you're saying, I do believe there's always going to be someone to give a fresh take, an innovative take to the books.
Yeah. Sounds like someone I just met. Right, if you'll allow me,
Sure.
I've got some quick fire questions for you. So serve and volley, pim pam pum. Don't think about it too much.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Ooh. Favorite H.P. Lovecraft story?
Shadow over Innsmouth.
First comic you ever bought?
Incredible Hulk.
Horror or fantasy?
Horror.
Creepiest mythos monster?
Ooh. Yeah, that's tough.
Okay.
That's a tough rapid one.
Time out. Paperback or digital comics?
Paperback.
Absolutely. If Cats of Ulthar was to be adapted to film, live action or animation?
You know, I can't. I would have to say live action, even though I don't know how you could do it. It's a short story. It would be tough. I would say live action.
Interesting. Well, that's possible these days with all the computer
That's true.
animation, isn't it? Right. And then the final three. Arkham or Innsmouth?
Arkham or what?
Innsmouth.
Innsmouth.
Ooh. Elder Gods or the Dreamlands?
The Dreamlands.
And what's scarier? Tentacles or madness?
Madness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Just to finish off, because like I said, I need to get ready for work tomorrow and so on. Have you ever played the Call of Cthulhu RPG?
I have never done that. I've never done it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think, because I interviewed Sandy Peterson, who designed the RPG, and I think we owe a lot these days to the RPG for preserving the mythos and keeping it alive for a whole bunch of people. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of people that have never read Lovecraft, but they play the game a lot. And I think it does encapsulate really well the flavor and the spirit of Lovecraft stories there. So I think if you ever get a chance,
take a shot.
Yeah. It's always good fun.
Nice.
Bruce, thank you ever so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
This evening for me. Before we go, where can people find your work, social media, all that sort of stuff, please?
I would say Cats of Ulthar is out on Amazon. All my other books you could still find on Amazon, basically. I'm on X as Bruce Brown something. Can't even remember it right now. That's bad. But yeah, no, my work, if they want to find it, they can find it on Amazon.
Brilliant.
Okay.
And then, question then. Finally, final question, completely going on something else then. How important do you think it is these days for new writers or artists to have a social media following?
I don't think it's important at all. I don't. I really don't. I don't. I actually, I think they need to find a way to get their artwork out there, but I don't think social media is the driver that it used to be.
So I'm not gonna name the publisher, but I was browsing through the submissions guidelines for one of the American publishers,
Hmm.
for novels, and they were asking, like, what's your social media presence, or do you know any, uh, for want of a better word, influencers that will help promote your work?
Hmm.
So, whereas in the past, everyone that I've talked to have said, it's not important.
Right.
I'm starting to see that maybe it is. I don't know.
I think when it comes to, I think there are definitely people who believe that. But as a writer, when it comes to selling books, to trying to find new readers, I don't find, I I think it's a flooded zone where you have so many writers saying,
Mhm.
here's my book, here's my book, here's my book, here's my book. It's better to go outside the norm, is my opinion or my advice, if you want to promote your book.
So what would that be? Going outside the norm. What would that entail?
I would say, reviews in newspapers, advertising your book in magazines, things like that. I mean, most people traditionally think I'm going to open my account, I'll post a picture of my book and ask people to buy it. There's
Mm.
just only a few zillion people doing that. So you get lost in the sea. I think it's best to try to find ways that are different to make yourself visible to the world.
Yeah, I think
Reader.
ultimately writing is a low risk, low reward activity, isn't it?
Yeah. You do it you do it because it's a calling. You do it because it's a calling, because it's something you feel moved inside to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with those wise words, I think we're going to call it our day today.
All
So
right.
thank you very much once
Thank
again
you
for
again.
being here. And anyone that has made it this far, thank you very much. Take lots and lots of care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.